Today, I'm not here for a change to talk about flexibility, demand response, energy market design, but to basically take a step back, look at the bigger picture, basically the transition in a changing geopolitical context, in a disruptive context that we're in, and then essentially leave it to you, to your creativity, to make the link to what it means for your industry, for your business. But maybe before I get in there, can I just get a sense from you in the room, if you think about the next 3-5 years, what's your sense for the sector, for the flexibility sector? Is it going to get tougher, or is it going to get better? Is it going to be easier to thrive? Who thinks it's going to get tougher? Oh, that's pretty good.
Optimistic.
Yeah. Now, who's thinking it's going to get better? We have a lot of yeses. We have very few abstentions. So that's actually quite encouraging, and I would have shared that assessment, but wanted to be safe that you who are in the business have the same sense of it. Now, getting into the bigger picture, I guess in terms of disruptive context and substance, we're not short of topics. An example, Ursula von der Leyen, who recently said, the West as we knew it no longer exists. We're in the middle of basically the global world order changing in its entirety. And we see that very clearly in the political agenda, the policy discourse in Europe at the moment. I mean, if you open the papers, it's all about security, it's about defense, resilience, and competitiveness in a very disruptive context globally. And what does that mean for the transition? What does it mean for the course that Europe is on? And by and large, I think it's very clear, no matter how you look at it, looking through these different dimensions, Europe needs to continue, and Europe is on the right track with the transition, with the transformation of its energy system. And not only from a climate imperative view, but if you look at it from the security side, very clearly, and the gas crisis, I think, showed it so clearly, how dependent we are on fuel imports and what the coercive power behind that is. Now, obviously, security also matters in a renewables-based system. We will no longer have this coercive challenge for the operative part of the energy system. There will still be risks related especially to the capex part of the system. Some of them existed before, will continue, will be enhanced, some will be new. Thinking about the existing ones, obviously cyber, but also new responses that Europe needs to look into, can look into, and I think there is a lot of know-how, in particular also in this room, on how to respond to these security challenges and take these into consideration. From an economic perspective, 375 billion is what Europe still spent on fuel imports last year, most of it fossils. Fuel imports, obviously, on energy imports, most of it fuels, last year. And on the contrary, we've had Oxford Economics calculate what it means economically to realize 90% greenhouse gas reductions by 2040 in Europe. And they quantified it as 2% GDP growth by 2040 compared with the baseline. And then even from a social perspective, and I don't think I need to tell you that a refurbished home is a lot healthier, better for people to live in. But of course you need to get there, you need to make that step, and that also means that households, homeowners, and also businesses in some cases need to be supported to make that development, and especially vulnerable households. Now, is it possible to make this way? How is it possible to make this way in a volatile context? Technically, we know that it can be done. This is an example from the Agora gas exit scenario that we published right after Russia's attack on the Ukraine, how the transition can look across sectors, and technically we are able to do it. We're able to do it in the energy sector, in the building system, we're able to do it in industry. And what it takes is basically the right balanced policy mix that gets us there. And times are tough to do this. And they are tough, on the one hand, simply because we're at mid-transition phase, meaning the old system is still there, isn't fully phased out, the infrastructures are there, we're still holding on to it, and the new system isn't fully at scale yet. That time is always one with frictions, is always a difficult one. And now we're in this time at a moment when basically the world order around us is changing, when we see a lot of disruptions in the system. Now, what does that mean for Europe, and how do we deal with that? And I think one of the clear answers is, well, especially because of all these different tensions, because of the political context and the different demands, the key is to maximize synergies and to minimize the conflict between different objectives. And in the end, that lands us with three main themes that I would like to emphasize for today. And the first theme is electrification. Electrification, meaning we use the possibility that we have with a renewable-based system, with a mostly domestic-based electricity system, bring that into the other sectors. And you know what it means for buildings, you know what it means for transport, where the avenues are clear. I would like to also put a highlight on industry, where we last year did a bigger study with Fraunhofer, looking at basically what's possible for electrification in the industry sector, where obviously process heat is the single most important energy use, the single most important fossil use that we have. And what we found is that 60% of the not yet electrified industrial heat can be electrified with technologies that are available today. Think of industrial scale heat pumps. Think of electric arc furnaces for steel production, for example. And with technologies that are expected to be available and commercial by 2035, 90% of the not yet electrified industrial heat can be electrified. So then we are also looking into electric steam crackers and other applications. Again, a field, I would say, well, your sector is best placed to look into what that also means for flexibility options or not. But maybe leaving it there when it comes to the big picture, the general direction of travel on electrification. The second one I want to highlight is circularity. Clearly, in the world that we're in, a no-regret solution, a source for innovation potentials on recycling practices, on digital tracing, but in many ways, I think it can be broken down into the logic of the various sectors, and of course also a major opportunity to reduce the reliance of imports of virgin materials. And then the third is international partnerships. And international partnerships, I think, means a whole range of things. It can be about partnerships, diversified partnerships for raw materials, for hydrogen derivatives, intermediate industrial products that Europe can look at. It also means screening FDI, foreign direct investments, both investments that Europeans make abroad, but also investments that are happening here in Europe. And what are the conditions for these? And how is value retained? How is know-how retained in Europe? And then, of course, we have the whole range of trade defense subsidies, procurement policies, the whole question about how are lead markets designed in Europe for European industry that Europe can look into. I think maybe to conclude this bigger picture conversation, what a lot of it comes down to is basically for Europe to stand together and be one actor, have this actorness not only in global climate diplomacy, but as a trade partner in the world, but also internally. And that includes, of course, also an interconnected electricity system, an internal electricity market that helps Europe and helps Europeans to have access to reliable, resilient, and cheap energy.